they had veins, so they would literally suck the blood that was supposed to go to my organs and, you know, vital places in my body to function. It would be sucking that blood out and going, like, it took on a life of its own. It was almost like I was pregnant. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am going to be doing a little bit of a different type of content today. I feel like my experience with being diagnosed with fibroids, going through those symptoms, and then having my surgery definitely opened the door to talk about it and help somebody else. So what are fibroids? Fibroids are non-cancerous tumors that are within the uterus or on the outside of the uterus. In my case, I had 2 fibroids that were inside of my uterus, and they have been growing since 2019. That's when I first noticed one, and my largest one of the 2 had grown to about 15 centimeters. So essentially it looked like I was 4 months pregnant on a regular day. And some of the symptoms that I experienced was very heavy periods, very painful periods, and again, just that physical aspect of looking pregnant. I would even be asked if I was pregnant in public. And it makes you realize that, like, not everybody, and I've been asked if I was pregnant by other women who are well into their 30s, 40s. And for me, I was always taught that, like, you never ask a woman that. And then, of course, being a woman, you kind of have a different perspective, and you should be more sensitive to things like that because women do experience infertility and other issues. But I learned a lot throughout this process of dealing with them, and one of the lessons that I've learned is that not everybody has common sense or etiquette or knowledge in this topic. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to tell my story. And also, when I found the surgeon who did my procedure, she told me, she was like, you know what, you're very young and you should tell your story, because a lot of people think that because they're younger, in their 20s, they don't necessarily think about potential health issues, infertility, or things like that. So, like, being somebody who's only in their 20s and had to deal with, like, this experience, it's like, that's another reason why I felt, you know, opted to tell my story. So I first realized something was wrong in 2019. I can remember one time I was laying on my back, and typically when you lay on your back, your stomach is flat, or it almost looks like it's sinking. Well, my lower abdomen, like, inclined, like there was like a visible, so like say this was my stomach, right? Instead of it going like this, it went like this at the lower abdomen. So there was like a visible mass that I noticed right beneath my belly button on the left side. And so of course I'm like freaking out. I'm like, what? Like, this is not normal. So I remember just kind of like touching it. It felt very hard to touch. Wasn't painful to touch, just like there was something there. So after a couple of weeks, I booked an appointment because I thought it was my bladder. One thing that happened very early on was frequent urination. I can remember going to the bathroom like all the time. And so I knew that something was like going on with my bladder. So I went to go see somebody who specialized in the bladder and would have been able to pick up on any bladder infections or anything like that. So, and this, at the time in 2019, I was living back home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So the healthcare system there, for the most part, does not have a bad reputation. I guess just with me and my experience, and then of course being, you know, a Black woman, a lot of the times we have to vouch for ourselves. So in my experience, I felt like I had to do a lot in order to be diagnosed with the proper thing. So when I saw this lady in Wisconsin, she literally, like, I can remember her feeling on the mask. I can remember her kind of doing like this full like exam on my lower abdomen and near my bladder. And she was like, everything seems fine. You seem perfectly fine. Mind you, like, you could visibly see this mass. She was like, I'm going to prescribe you some medication for the bladder to help with the frequent urination. So she gave me something to address that, but ultimately there was no point in taking it because the issue of what was being pressed up against my bladder and what was actually causing the frequent urination was not being addressed at that time. So fast forward to 2020, we all know what a nightmare of a year that was. For me personally, so much transpired. And so I didn't prioritize my health. When you factor in stress and eating habits, I did a lot of stress eating, grief eating. I think that all contributed to the growth of what was a fibroid at the time. I didn't know what it was. So I relocated, I moved to Atlanta in 2020, and the first thing that I did, because so I lived in Atlanta for college, and I graduated college here, and then I ended up moving back home, and then I moved back here in 2020. So I had already established a relationship with this acupuncturist here, and so one of the first things I did when I moved back was schedule an appointment to go see her. And this particular acupuncturist, if you're not familiar, it's something that is practiced in Chinese medicine, and they have a way of addressing diseases that are going on within the body through this way of acupuncture and other things that they do, like teas and things like that. So one of the first things she did was she read, like, she has a way of reading what's going on in the body by looking in your eyes and looking at your tongue. And then I was there for an acupuncture appointment and to get a massage. So I can remember her, you know, poking me with the needles in different areas, and she got to my lower abdomen, and she was like really quiet, and I remember her pressing on the mass that you can visibly see, and she was like, you have a tumor. She was like, you need to get this addressed. She was like, it's more than likely a fibroid. And so this is my first time ever hearing of what a fibroid, and it freaked me out because anytime you hear the word tumor, you automatically think the worst. And so I couldn't even finish my appointment. Like, I was just a wreck, and luckily my mom was with me getting her acupuncture at the same time, and she was just like trying to calm me down. She was like, it's fine, we're gonna schedule an appointment, like it's very common, like, we're gonna get it addressed. So that kind of helped me get through the rest of that session. But it wasn't until I saw an acupuncturist, somebody who was not necessarily a traditional healthcare professional here in the United States, but that's when I first became familiar with the idea that I had what was called a fibroid. And so from there, I scheduled an appointment with I established care and scheduled an appointment with a primary care doctor because, again, I'm new to the city and I didn't have a primary care doctor here. So I went to go see her, and this was September of 2020. From that appointment, she scheduled an ultrasound to formally, you know, diagnose and see what was going on within my lower abdomen. And after that is when they did diagnose me with a 9-centimeter fibroid. Now in September, I know that I have a fibroid. It's been diagnosed, and I start to do my research. I start to research, you know, my options as far as how do I get it removed? Can it be shrunk? So yeah, I was like, okay, of course, the idea of surgery freaked me out because being put to sleep and anesthesia, like, that just wasn't going to be my first option if there were other things that I could do. So I started to eat healthier. I started to make an effort to work out, and ultimately what it came to in 2021 when I was trying to do these things was that I found that my periods were getting a lot heavier and a lot worse. And I could tell that it was kind of growing. I believe that the cause of fibroids is hormonal. And another key indicator for me was that I also had a lot of hormonal cystic acne on my face, which is obviously a sign of estrogen dominance. And I had, very rough periods, which is also a sign of my hormones being unbalanced. So when you factor in the estrogen dominance and also environmental stress around you, in 2021 and 2020, those were very stressful years for me. I think all of that kind of impacted my health. So even though I was doing like these workouts and like healthier eating, it wasn't addressing the problem because it had already, once I kind of got diagnosed, it was already at 9 centimeters, which is pretty big. So it's 2021 and I'm realizing that this thing is not going anywhere. So with that being said, I was like, okay, let me think about potentially getting it removed. And the first step was for me was to find the right OBGYN who specialized in fibroids and pelvic health, like that sort of thing. Because you have your OBGYNs, and I found great OBGYNs here in Georgia, but they weren't necessarily they didn't have a focus on what I was dealing with. And so I had gone through 2 different potential OBGYNs. I had consultations with them, and I just didn't feel like they were the right fit to do the surgery for me and get them removed. And so then I did my research, and I found a practice that specialized in fibroids and just pelvic wellness in general, and that is where I ultimately decided that I felt the most comfortable. My surgeon, we hit it off immediately. She was very compassionate, she was knowledgeable, and she was Black. And those 3 things were the biggest factors for me. And she did these surgeries weekly, and she knew what she was, she specialized in fibroids. That was her thing. And so, or that is her thing. And so she told me that my options were to have a hysterectomy, which is the removal of my uterus altogether. And typically that is what women get when they are past that childbearing age, or they've already had their children and they don't want to deal with having the uterus anymore. And so that was not my reality. I'm 28 and I don't have any kids, and I want to have kids, so I wanted to preserve my uterus. So the option for me is the open myomectomy surgery, and that is what I ultimately had. I had the open myomectomy surgery on December 23rd, 2022, and it went well. The surgery itself, I may make a separate video on that because it's a whole nother conversation between the actual procedure and the aftercare that I experienced. And I'm still kind of going through because it's been 3 weeks and I've been put on like a 6-week healing process. So I have not had my 6-week follow-up appointment yet since having the surgery 3 weeks ago. And yeah, that's kind of where I want to stop this this video, because I would like to go more in depth in the next video about my actual surgery, getting prepared for it, the day of the surgery, and the aftercare, which has been interesting to say the least. So I hope that I kind of covered what the symptoms look like or could look like physically, emotionally, and all of that. and just the importance of vouching for yourself when you know something is wrong with your body, and getting second, third, fourth opinions. Because when I look back, I went through 1, 2, 3, 4. I had gone through like 4 or 5 different doctors and specialists before I found the right person for me. And so luckily my symptoms weren't like debilitating to the point where I had to do something immediately, like get them removed immediately. I do think that, you know, looking back, I probably should have jumped on it a whole lot sooner than I did. I shouldn't have waited almost 2 years, because it, like I said, by the time I was diagnosed, it was 9 centimeters. And then when I had my surgery, it was at 15 centimeters. So it was huge. It started to make life very uncomfortable. My quality of life was not where I wanted it to be. And then obviously you guys see me like create content and dress up in these outfits, and it was really starting to get into the way of my creative process. And again, I was looking 4 to 6 months pregnant every time I would put on something, and it just wasn't, it was not giving what it was supposed to give at all. So I was like, there is another side to this. I did join a support group on Facebook with women who had the same surgery, and I think that's what really helped me make peace with the fact that I had to have this surgery. And ultimately, you know, it made me keep my appointment and not back out of it, because I'm the type of person, the day before the appointment or the day of, I'm more than likely gonna back out. Like, that's just me. Like, I will overthink and I will freak myself out and I'll cancel it. And I just really pride myself on deciding not to do that. And I really went forward with it. My appointment was originally, I was put on a wait list in August, and my appointment was not until February of 2023. So luckily somebody canceled at the last minute, and it was right before Christmas. It was December 23rd, and I was like, well, I'm about to be basically out of it until like literally Christmas had passed, New Year's had passed, and I was healing. I was not in a place to be able to really like celebrate the way I wanted to, dress up the way I wanted to, create content the way I would have wanted to. But I am blessed to have these, those life suckers, as I call them, out of me. They literally suck the life out of you. In the next video, I will attach a picture of what mine looked like. These things, for me, they had a pulse. Like when I would lay flat, my lower abdomen, you could see it like pulsating. They had veins. So they would literally suck the blood that was supposed to go to my organs and, you know, vital places in my body to function. It would be sucking that blood out and going, like, it took on a life of its own. It was almost like I was pregnant. And it was with these poisonous little tumors. And so if you're somebody struggling with this, just know that there is hope. A lot of people will tell you that you can shrink them naturally. There's different programs and diet plans out there to help you shrink them naturally. And I'm not saying that they don't work, but I think the key to that is catching them very, very, very early when they're still really tiny. If they are big, like mine were, and even if they're mid-sized, I would not go through the trouble of trying to shrink them when you could have a fresh start and just get them completely out of you. And I think now I have the knowledge and you know, the awareness moving forward to make those lifestyle changes and have a fresh start and a clean slate. A lot of times they do grow back if you just go back to your old lifestyle. And I think, you know, the key is going to be getting routine checkups, routine ultrasounds to see kind of like, you know, how your uterus is doing and if they have grown back. So for me, that's going to just have to be a part of my healthcare routine. I'm going to have to get routine checkups every couple of months. But it is a very common diagnosis. I think I read that 80% of Black women have to deal with this on some sort of level. Whether and some women, I think my mom has. I know my mom has them. My grandmother has them, but they are not affecting them. They're tiny, like, you know, they can live their life and move on. But in my situation, it had grown way too big, and it was just time to evict them. And so, yeah, that's just my story with being diagnosed and having the symptoms and getting the surgery. I plan to speak more on the aftercare and going through the procedure the day of in the next video. So stay tuned, and thank you guys for watching this video. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because I really do think that it's going to help more women, and the more people who know about it, the better chance they have of addressing this issue before it gets, you know, unbearable. See you in the next video.